Hello, and welcome to a special episode of the Lost Decades podcast. You could call it episode 16 and a half.
Mm-hmm. 16
It
and
is
three
a
quarters if you're a
special,
Harry Potter
oh, I
fan.
should have made this full screen. It is a special episode about the Sumerian gods. So I'm going on a trip to Europe for like 2 weeks. So to have something to release, I wanted to have some kind of episode to record. But so I thought of doing the Sumerian gods. We kind of talked about this in the past, but doing the research and making this slideshow ended up taking as long as it normally takes me for an episode. So it's kind of pointless, but it was still fun. And this episode, I'm specifically focusing on Sumerian gods. So not Hittite or even like Akkadian or Assyrian. A lot of them are essentially the same. They just have a different name. So maybe in a future episode, we'll talk about like the Akkadians, and some of them will overlap, but then they'll have their specific Akkadian gods and stuff like that. But just to keep it simple, and I just want to do Sumerian, and maybe we'll do like Egyptian if I have to do something like this again. But here's some statues of some Sumerian like priests. Would you call him a priest, I guess, right? There's not like another
I Everything
term.
I've read was they're priest. I mean high priest, but that's literally just
Priest,
the same
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
So the Sumerian structured their pantheon in this like four-tiered system, and they're kind of sorted even the gods into one of these four categories. So there's the high dome, the space between, the flat earth, and the depths. So the depths are kind of like the underworld in like Greek mythology. The flat earth obviously is just normal earth, and then the space between is essentially the sky and like the sun and the moon and outer space, and then the high dome is kind of just like the ethereal realm and something like that. So starting off with the first god is On or Anu,
Mm-hmm.
and he was the head of the pantheon, and he was a sky god. He's essentially like the god of the sky, not so much air and wind, but just the general concept of the sky and like I guess the heavens, you could say. And his main, I guess they call it a cult city, the main city where his temple was located was Uruk, which is one of the first cities. So again, it tracks with how a lot of the way the pantheon was structured is based on what cities were powerful and when they became powerful. And so like the early cities would have the more powerful gods, and then the later on cities would have the less powerful gods, like the granddaughter of one of them. So even though he was the technical head on paper, he actually doesn't really have much going on in his mythology, and he's sort of just like almost like the Christian God, where he's a little bit unknown. He's kind of mysterious, and I guess he's the source of divine decrees. He's the one who technically is granting kingship to the mortal rulers, and he's typically shown wearing a horned cap, which is their symbol of divinity. So it's almost like a crown for them, is this like horned cap. And the more horns, the higher ranked the god. Then here's just some other pictures. I like
I
him
like
like,
some of these pictures.
yeah, like splitting this bull open. I will say I should have looked it up. Some of these are from this one like board game that looked pretty cool. Like this one with where he's sitting on the throne was from the game. And anyway, I'll credit when I post this episode. So here's a map of Mesopotamia, and like I said, On was based in Uruk, so down south. And again, you're going to kind of see as they get sort of less popular, and you could say like the later
Well, and
created gods go more north.
and I could be off, wasn't Ur considered like one of the first cities, like actual
Yeah,
cities to like exist? And that's
even
probably
before
why
Ur,
it was there.
yeah. So it sort of makes sense that Uruk like does agriculture, and they're building up this city, and they have the kind of the first kings ever, and they kind of invent this god that then from then on, when more people make cities and make gods, it's almost like when you make a city that like creates the god. That's how I sort of picture it. And they're like,
I
this
mean,
god. And I don't know all the details, but it's like, oh, our city's near a marshland, so this god is kind of the god of water or something like that, you know?
It is funny how it does seem like the city gets to kind of decide what they want. They're like, yeah, we're like the moon city. And all I mean is not just that decision, but how it seems to be like accepted by everyone else. Like, well, yeah, that makes sense. They're like the moon city.
Yeah,
Like
it's
that's
like their
yeah.
branding. They have like a
Yeah.
marketing team, and they're like, okay, we're Pepsi, we're gonna be blue, Coke is red, Sprite is green.
And
We're
that's why it's just
Nipper.
funny how Nippur like got the best deal because they're like, oh yeah, we're basically where Enlil is. I know we haven't got to him yet, but all I mean is where Enlil is, and like we're just going to be the seat of all religious power. And it's just kind of funny that they just sort of were like, yeah, that's what we do, and everyone's like, yeah, that makes sense.
They're like,
Like,
okay,
yeah,
I guess so, yeah. So, well, funny you say that,
yeah.
because the next up is Enlil, and his domain is the air, wind, storms, and kingship. And his city, like Andrew just said, is Nipper. And he's essentially the face of the pantheon. He's almost like the Zeus, you could say, in a certain way, where Zeus isn't technically the head. He had like the father, it's like Jupiter in Rome. I forget what it like
Well, Jupiter
Chronos.
is Zeus, but I get what you mean.
I think
Like,
Chronos maybe was his
Kronos
dad, the
is his dad.
Titans.
Yeah,
Where
Kronos
like
is.
it almost makes it seem like his dad is a more powerful god, and then they took over. So
I
it's
mean, because
almost like
he also had the
yeah,
two brothers, Poseidon and Hades, which is funny that they had less power, but yeah.
right. So Enlil is almost the most well known of the gods, or the most powerful. And like we said, Nippur was always thought of as a holy city from the beginning of Mesopotamian, civilization. And let's see. So he actually runs things, as I said, and he apparently hands down the Tablet of Destinies, and he makes the calls that shape human fate. So he's more
Ooh.
hands-on. On is maybe more like he got the engine, the whole thing going, the machine going, and Enlil is running it. He's the riding the driving the train or whatever. So he's the one who, like I said, he's hands-on. He sends the Great Flood in the Sumerian deluge or flood myth, and we'll get into
Yeah.
Enki. But Enki actually is a bro, and he works around. He tips off a mortal, so he's sort of the Prometheus who gives humans fire. He kind of like
Hmm.
betrays the gods for humans. Yeah, and Enlil is the father of Nana, Ninurta, and Nergal, who I think we'll talk about most of those guys later.
Nurgle. Oh God, that's funny.
What is Nergal from? Oh,
Warhammer 40K.
oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you see when you Google I've been Googling all these gods, and you see so many like Warhammer things and random other like RPGs and stuff that use the names.
Yeah.
So yeah, Nippur, you could say, was essentially Mesopotamia's Vatican. It was the
That's true.
religious capital, even
They
if
kind of
political
and the
power felt.
significance was it's funny because so much religion and outside of even just Mesopotamia, but it's funny how religion's main purpose is legitimization of rule usually. And so that's why it seems like all the way from the original Sumerians to the Akkadians to the Babylonians to, Is and Larsa, all would go to Nippur to be like, yep, like that. See, remember, like I went here and I gave a bunch of money. That's why I'm king. Like gods totally agree with me. I don't know.
Yeah, I would slightly disagree. I would just say I do kind of feel like religion was already there for other reasons, like people just trying to understand what was going on, and like why things like lightning storms happen, and then gods kind of or not gods, kings kind of co-opted the religious structure and were like, "Oh, actually this god, he said I'm actually in charge like on earth. He's still the
I
god,
guess
but
that's what I mean more by organized religion. The idea of like,
right.
why is Nippur important at all? Because the kings go there, give a bunch of money, build a bunch of statues, and then that legitimizes their rule in the eyes of everyone
Yeah, I
else.
was watching some
Yeah.
video and I was thinking, yeah, that same thing where it's an easy way for a king to kind of collect taxes in a weird secondary way of like, all right, everyone just kind of donates their food, and maybe they have money to the temple as like a donation sort of thing, and then I take most of that and use it to
Hmm.
run the country. And it feels more, it's easier to, I think, convince people to do that because you're like, oh, you're supporting their religion and all this stuff, rather than like I
Yeah.
just need money so I can like go fight a war. Um, And also, yeah, this map's kind of cool. I like that it shows like the Gutians up here, who we heard about, and Elam, and it also
Got Mari
shows
up
where
there.
the ancient coastline was. Yeah, instead of
Yeah, it's crazy how much that region changed over time.
yeah. All right. So then we got, as I mentioned before, Enki, also known as A.
Yeah,
His
EA,
domain
the origin of
was
the video game company.
yeah, EA. Challenge
Yeah,
everything.
challenge everything.
Challenge everything. So his domain, as you can kind of tell from the image, was water, and another W word, wisdom, magic, and crafts. So it sort of makes sense that water is connected with magic and crafting because it's fluid and it's can fit in different containers and it's sort of
You
mystical,
can
like why
freeze it, you can boil it,
you can freeze it. Yeah, it changes
which is funny
form.
because we take that for granted now, but like back then, like water was the only thing that really would like freeze or you could boil. Like there wasn't anything else. Like it was kind
Yeah.
of crazy. You could
And I
transform it.
and I know like back in this time they essentially saw magic and science. They were essentially the same little like word. Like there wasn't a distinction. It was just you're someone who understands mysteries of the universe and can do strange things and produce like weird fire and stuff like that. So yeah, this guy's Enki. He's a little bit of like a trickster, right? He's a little too smart for his
I mean,
own
he's got his
good, and
little,
he does little magic. When you're got magic, you're gonna do little pranks on people.
yeah, you
And
got to
his
pull a
main
Loki.
city was Eridu. And yeah, so he's the trickster, kind of wise man combination god, and he's clever, generally benevolent towards humans, so he's not evil. Um, and he actually ends up solving the problems that other gods create. He kind of sweeps up the mess. He kind of reminds me a little bit of like Hermes. Maybe there's another god that's actually closer, but he sort of reminds me of he's a little bit tricky, but I always feel like Hermes is like a nice guy. Um, and in the flood myth, he's the one, as I said, who secretly warns a mortal man to build a boat, defying Enlil's plan to wipe out humanity. And he apparently shapes, this is a pretty big deal. He shapes the first humans out of clay with
Oh, humans are
Ninurta's
important to
like,
the story, which is that's cool.
yeah,
For all the
but
elves and dwarves were gone, that's all that was left.
that's true.
So
It doesn't mention the elves or the
yeah.
no or the hobbits, but he actually so Eridu is considered by Sumerian tradition to actually be the first city. So I don't think it ever reached the peaks of Uruk. Like I think Uruk, in some sense, maybe it actually like now that we've done archaeology, it's like oh actually Uruk was first, but like for some reason they thought of Eridu as maybe it was barely even a city, but it was
To
sort
be
of just the
fair,
first sign of
we don't
anyone.
know that much. I think we only know Uruk is the first city for other reasons, but like
Yeah.
we're always discovering new stuff. It could come out later, like, no, Eridu was definitely the first city. So
And that's why the more I read about history, especially things like this, the more you kind of just have to make up your own mind about it and just go on like vibes where it's like you can see how a lot of like historical things are like hidden within like religions because it's like okay they through Enki they sort of see Eridu as the first city so they're kind of that's how they're keeping it in their history is through like the religion. um so it's like you can learn a lot but you're not going to know exactly what happened but you can kind of get
yeah.
like okay clearly it's an old city like it's older than Babylon. um, yeah, so that's all about him really, but he's pretty important even though it's you'd think he's not really Poseidon. You think of Poseidon it's like okay, he just deals with the ocean and water, but he actually created humans with Nanursag's help and he kind of just served a big role in making civilization.
Well,
And
and
as
what's
I said,
interesting is it kind of tracks for them because when we think of stuff like Poseidon and stuff, the Greeks were such a seafaring people, and these people like they're not really going to the Gulf that much. They're mainly just rivers running in the Middle East. Like,
mhm,
so I'm not saying they don't know that oceans and seas exist. It's just that
right.
that wasn't a
It's a
center of their culture. River water was important for like irrigation and travel, but it wasn't seen
right.
as this like insurmountable giant blue thing where you can't see anything on the other side. Like it's just
That is
that,
a
yeah.
that is a really good point. I almost feel like whenever the Greeks or whoever I don't know if I look into this more like whoever invents the concept of Poseidon, I do kind of feel like that is kind of more of a Greek specific god. And it makes sense. You always hear about Poseidon, And it's like, yeah, because Greece is all these islands, so they're more focused on the ocean and the giant mass of like being on a ship and a wave crushes your ship. Or yeah, you're right. I never thought about that. But in Mesopotamia, they would probably barely ever see the ocean in their entire life. So
Hmm.
they think of it as, and even in this picture, you kind of see it's more of a river vibe. He's kind of, it's just
Yeah.
flowing. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So here's some more, or here's just like another picture that
Oh, nice. That's
is
cool.
more like actually how it looked in the carving. And this is just like from I think that board game, so it's like super stylized, but he's just like he seems pretty cool, right? Like you can imagine playing this
Oh no,
character
this is
game.
an ancient carving for
This is
sure.
actually, yeah,
Yeah.
this is from a temple.
Hmm.
And yeah, as I said, here's Eridu, and you can tell it's old because it's very far south, and that's just where they started their major cities. For probably because it's closer to the Gulf, I would think.
Hmm.
It's the
For
main reason
trade, I think.
for
I don't
trade.
know 100%, but I think
Yeah,
trade was a big reason that led to the cities,
because
initial cities
you get
growing.
the benefits of being on a river and you're near the Gulf, whereas if you're not near the Gulf, you kind of just only have the river. So then I mentioned her before. She apparently helped create humanity, and it sort of makes sense because she is the goddess of earth. So earth mixed with Enki's water made mud or clay, and then that's how they made the humans. And what I kind of think is cool about that is like in a certain sense that is true. Like if you were to break up the universe into four elements, it's like okay, if you just consider earth is kind of just like any physical object, and water is water, and then you kind of are humans are just basically like physical matter and like water.
What
It's
would
like
the
a
other two
solid
be?
and a liquid
Would there
mixed
be
together.
fire and air?
And then we need air to breathe, so we do have to breathe air. And then fire is kind of just like energy, I guess. So
Hmm.
anyway,
And that, okay.
so she's like their earth goddess. I think maybe more like Gaia probably is like a similar.
I mean, I see her with a bunch of nature. Granted, this is very stylized, but
Yeah,
like,
fertility and the mountains.
it's funny too that it tracks with fertility because she created humans, so she gave them the ability to make more of themselves.
True. Exactly, yeah. If you sort of think of, yeah, like more of the sky gods are just kind of controlling humanity and controlling fate and everything, whereas like the earth god is actually doing things on earth that are like impacting
Hmm.
physical humans and stuff. Yeah. Her city was Kesh and also apparently Adab. And when I looked into it, they don't even know where Kesh is. They just know it's near Adab, and they do know where Adab is. So they were nearby. And she is, as I said, a creator figure. And let's see, in the myth of Enki and Hag, has her giving birth to a series of healing goddesses after Enki falls ill from eating forbidden plants, often depicted with an omega shaped symbol thought to represent a womb or udder, tying her to fertility and nursing.
Hmm.
So,
It's funny how many
yeah.
parallels there are to other religions.
Well, I mean, I think they really just kind of took the concepts and
Well, yeah, no, 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 I'm not down that at all. I just mean it's so funny to hear about the
it's funny how
flood, the
similar.
forbidden fruit,
Yeah.
like all this stuff. It's like, huh?
And I thought this carving was kind of cool too. How it's like
Yeah.
looking like straight at you. And yeah, there is Adab. It's kind of sort of in the middle, right? Smack dab in the middle of the action. And this is a good place to kind of talk about just where the major cities were. And yeah, I forget what I was going to say about this slide exactly, but
Well,
I
I
just
mean,
like,
they're also just all along the rivers, which not that that's
yeah,
surprising, but it is funny how obviously it makes well, not even funny. It's just it's so important. Like we don't have the means to make these cities survive outside of being near these rivers. Like that is the only way that they get by.
yeah, it's just reminding us of the thing I keep saying of like it started more in the south and it moved up the river. Like just
Hmm.
how much this is really about literally traveling up the river. People probably didn't walk very often. They would just take the boat if they had one because it'd be a lot faster. Um, so also this is a good point to talk about. There were like the four elements, and we already talked about them. So On was the sky, Enlil was air, Enki was water, and then Nursag was earth. So those are like the four elemental forces. And then we're gonna get to the three I don't know what you would call them, but they're more the planets like the sun, the astral bodies, the sun, the moon, and I guess Venus, like love. We'll get into it, but we're moving on from the four elements, and the rest of the gods are a little different. So, and it's kind of saying here it makes sense that the original four would have been more just like elements based. And then as the civilizations get more advanced and they have more like abstract thought as they're kind of going on, then they're starting to conceptualize like the concept of war and like the concept of justice and stuff. They had to kind of like invent that even as like a concept, you know?
Hmm.
So that's
I mean,
kind
it
of
makes sense when you're starting from literally nothing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so.
and it's an easy way to like explain it. Like if you're, let's just say you're like a nomadic, like hunter gatherer or something, and you just kind of have your tribal situation, and then maybe you've never even heard of like a war happening. You're just in this little valley or something, and someone has to explain the concept of war. It's easier if you have like a god, and you can be like, here's this god, and he has all these crazy weapons, and he controls people like fighting each other. And
Hmm.
anyway, first of these gods is Nana, which kind of seems like it would be a woman based on just how we think in the West about your name ending with an A like that. But it's this guy. He's also known as Sin, and his domain is the moon, and his city was Ur. So another pretty old city.
Hmm.
And he was the son of Enlil and Ninlil. So it's I'm
Brother,
guessing they were
sister pairing.
probably brother and sister just based on their
I don't
names.
actually know if they are. I just bet it sounds like some real
I think
Alabama
they
stuff.
are. I think they are. Classic mythology stuff. And so Nana, the moon god, is the father of Utu, the sun, which is interesting that
That
the
is
moon
very interesting.
would be the father of the sun. But maybe it kind of makes sense where you'd be like, what is the point of the moon? Like, why do we have a moon? It doesn't really do anything. It kind of lights up the night, but like it's sort of random. But maybe if you're like, oh, in the past it was the sun and then it burned out and now it's just like this ball or something. Maybe they were thinking that, like, because it is more
It is
mysterious.
just crazy though that so many other religions have the sun as number one. You
Yeah.
know, like that's where
Oh, you're
everything
right. You're right.
that's life.
And it's funny that not only is the sun not number one, but it's like number like five or six.
I was
Like,
gonna say, yeah, like this guy's already the son of Air and I can't remember Ninlil, but
no, no,
anyway,
I don't think we talked about actually,
and
but
then so he's the moon, and then his so the sun is like the grandson of Air.
yeah.
Like it's funny,
Actually,
yeah,
while I'm talking, can you look up Ninlil? I'm kind of
yeah.
curious. So Nana, the moon guy, his ziggurat is in Ur, and that's one thing that was kind of cool. If I had more time, I would have found like each of these, but they all have obviously their specific temple, but just the concept that he has like a ziggurat and maybe one of the other gods has a different type of temple and maybe one just has like more of an obelisk, but they all had kind of their own special kind of temple in their city. And he's symbolized obviously by the crescent moon. And actually his cult was politically important because Ur-Nammu, who is the founder of the third dynasty of Ur, which is how we started our podcast in the first episode,
Yeah.
was simply about the founding of that dynasty. So Ur-Nammu heavily promoted Nana worship to legitimize his new capital, which is pretty cool. So it seems like that's why maybe it's weird, yeah, that but maybe that's why the moon is more powerful than the sun, is just because um Ur was the capital of Ur-Nammu, so then he promoted the moon god more. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Sorry, I got a little distracted reading about Ninlo.
Tell us about Ninlo.
So it sounds like she was kind of, it sucks, but she's like relegated as just the wife of Enlil because it seems like
Oh,
she just also does the wind and also knows about destinies. But it seems like most of the things are just sort of like she's worshipped in Nippur alongside Enlil, and she's basically just known as Enlil's wife. It seems like she wasn't really a pantheon on her own. She was worshipped as a senior deity, they said, but like more like, oh, she's like with Enlil. Like that's who
oh,
she is. There's not like a lot to her other than just being the mother of some of these other people.
that's probably why she didn't make it on the
Yeah.
slideshow, sadly. But I thought this was a pretty cool carving. You can kind of see like the crescent moon up here and all this other stuff. So
Well, it's
that,
funny too because they said later she's considered the in the Neo Assyrian Empire, their god Ashur. She's the wife of Ashur. So it's funny that they're just sort of like, She's just like the wife of the important person. That's who she is.
I hope my texts aren't coming through on this video. We'll see. Um,
Yeah. Okay.
I just saw one pop up. So actually, let me know if you end up seeing a text come up. Anyway, next up, well, here we go. Here's Ur. I think I already might have showed that earlier, but Ur's way down there. And then here is the next god. I just like this picture, so I'm starting with the big picture, but his name is Utu,
This.
and also known as Shamash, and he is the god of the sun. So as we said, it's kind of funny that he seems not very important. He's because his city is Sipar and also Larsa, and we did talk about the Isin Larsa period, but it's a bit
Mhm.
obscure of a time period, and I don't remember talking about Sipar that much. So it's like,
I'll be honest. We that's why this episode helps. We didn't talk about the gods all that much, other than just like, oh, they're the chief deity of this place.
yeah, it kind of puts some things into context, and it makes me even wonder. I didn't really look into why this city with this god, but maybe I'll do that now. But yeah, his domain was the sun, justice, truth, and oaths. So he really is kind of like a traditional like sun god, like sort of like Ra,
Mhm.
or even like I would say Zeus, or I guess it would be like what's his name? Art not Artemis. Artemis's brother, not Ares. Apollo. I think
Okay, I
Apollo
was like,
is
I don't actually know where we're
sorry,
going
I
with
knew it was an A word.
this.
Apollo. I guess Utu is kind of like Apollo because Apollo actually was, I think, the son of Zeus. Maybe he always is more like a younger guy, so maybe it weirdly actually is similar to Greece. But you would think the sun would be number one. Kind of weird,
Yeah.
but it kind of does weirdly give the ancient Sumerians more credit than you would think because you sort of think, oh, if I was in the world and didn't know anything, I would look at the sun and be like, wow, that must be really powerful. Like that's in charge of everything. And you wouldn't think about like beyond like other solar systems and things like that, where it's more like these other gods are more mysterious, and then the sun god is more like physical, like, oh yeah, it's just that ball of light right there. It's not that important. So yeah, Utu is actually the twin brother of Inanna, who I think I'm going to talk about. Um, and he sees everything the sun touches. Everything the sun touches is yours, son.
Oh wow! So this is it's a Mufasa allegory.
He's basically Mufasa, yeah. And much like Mufasa, he was a patron of justice, truth telling, oath taking. By the time he starts being called Shamash by the Babylonians, he's
Mhm.
apparently directly credited with handing down the laws to Hammurabi. So
Really? Okay.
that's interesting. Yeah.
I think we might have mentioned that because it's kind of like a Moses situation, sort of. But like,
Right, where he got it from God. Yeah.
yeah, he got it from God and brought it down.
Yeah. And maybe because he's connected with the Babylonians, maybe that's why he's not as big, is because they promoted him more and they were much later on. So he's a lesser god. But he apparently just his description doesn't really change at all over like all the civilizations kind of see him in a similar light, which like I was saying, he really does seem like Apollo because Apollo is always seen in like a chariot flying around, and even like Ra, you always see him like as this like the sun sort of flying across the sky in like a chariot.
Hmm.
Here's another like old version of him. He looks pretty cool. I would love to like live in a house that had like carvings like that on the
Yeah.
wall. It's so cool. And again, he's identified here with the lion. I
I
think
love how he's
Apollo.
just standing on it too, like the way he's got like his
Yeah,
foot on his back and his foot on his head. He's just like, yo, no
he's
big
like,
deal.
yeah, I control this lion,
He's even
and it
got
makes sense because I just think about how Leo is the lion, and it's in August, which is in the summer. It's all connected here. So it's interesting because we said he's identified with the city of Sippar, which is way up there on the Euphrates, deep in Akkad territory, even north of Babylon. And then Larsa is way down near Ur and Uruk. So it's
yeah.
interesting that he's kind of for both, but maybe he's the god of the sun, so it makes sense he's pretty popular in multiple locations. So it's like, oh, I don't want to travel all the way to Sipar. I live in, Isin, So I'm gonna just go to Larsa and I'll see his like junior temple at Larsa. I don't know, or maybe when Larsa was big, the temple.
Yeah, that's where I feel bad. I don't remember like when that switch happened because it could have been when Larsa was getting big. Because I focused so much on just different people that like
No,
maybe
no, no,
that's
it's not. But
caused
that's what
it.
I would imagine is like
Yeah.
there's the Isin Larsa period, so Larsa's bigger near the end of that, and then that sort of collapses, and that's when Babylon is rises pretty soon after that.
Hmm.
So that's the Sipar thing. So then we got Ninurta, who actually you hear that name a lot more than you would think for even though he's not the number one god in the pantheon.
Yeah.
But he's important. He is the god of war and agriculture, which seems like a weird combination, but the more I was reading about it, it kind of makes sense that back then, if you're, kind of tools are hard to come by in the first place. So if you have like sort of like an axe for like cutting crops, like you can use that as a weapon. And also there's just so many like little skirmishes and fighting over land and squabbles at this time that it was almost like everyone was a soldier and like a farmer at the same time. It's kind of
Yeah.
like the duality of man. It's like in peace, I'm a farmer and then I'm a soldier.
I mean
Uh,
that was kind of the issue too, was because I think we talked about that when um Hammurabi was taking power. Was he was sort of just like, okay, so we're gonna have the farmers and the merchants actually fight in the war, which was so like, oh my gosh, why are you doing that? Like, they got like we got to worry about this other stuff.
I guess it worked out for him, but it
I
is
mean,
it
it
is
did,
risky.
it did.
I was actually, side note, reminded me on my other podcast, Rain Check, which you can listen to. We were talking about Harold Godwinson when he is like waiting for William to come, but William's stuck in the storm for like 7 months. So then he like gets rid of his army. He like sends them home to do farming because it's like crop season. But then right the day he does that, Harold Hardrada invades in the north, so he has to like put him back together and march up there in
Yeah,
4 days. So anyway, um, Ninurta, his main city was Gursu and also Nippur. So he actually shared Nippur with Enlil because I think all right. So let's see. He was the son of Ninlil. So he's kind of like the Hercules. He's the monster slaying hero. He almost feels like he has like demigod vibes, like he's almost half human, half god. And his signature myth is, I guess, called the Lugal E, has him defeating the demon Asag and reshaping the landscape with stones as trophies, which Sumerians used to explain real geological figures. So maybe like mountains and hills and things, they'd say like, oh, those are trophies when he defeated Asag. And like I said, war and farming seem like they're pretty separate, like an odd pair, but the same god who defends the land also makes it fertile. So it's kind of just connected. Here's another. Oh, he also sometimes looks like a bird. So there's Ninurta.
from time to time.
So if I was a god,
Who doesn't? Who
if
doesn't?
I
Who
was a
hasn't
god,
been
I
through
would
that
look like a
god
bird
phase
sometimes. Not
where
all the time,
you're a
but I'd
god and you're
like.
like, I'm feeling birdish today.
I'm bored. I want to be a hermit crab today.
I mean, everything
So
goes to crabs.
here's Nipper and Gursu. Um, so I don't know the specifics on if it started in Gursu and then it moved to Nipper because he's Enlil's son, but more of a Sumer vibe rather than Akkadian. But again, Nipper really is right kind of in the middle of Akkad and Sumer. So then we're at Inanna, who is better known by the name Ishtar, I think by the Babylonians. And she is the domain of love, sex, war, again, and fertility. And her city is Uruk, again. And she is very consistent across the entire Mesopotamian religion. She's worshipped continuously from early Sumer all the way through the fall of Babylon. It just her name changes. And her signature myth is the descent of Inanna. So I think I had mentioned Inanna. She actually, yeah, she's the sister of Ninurta, I believe, right? Is that? Oh no, she's the sister of Utu, the sun god.
There we go.
So she her myth, she goes to the underworld to challenge her sister Ereshkigal. I think she definitely got the better name. She dies, and gets resurrected. And but she's kind of another contradictory where she's the goddess of love and war. And ancient hymns kind of treat them of two faces of the same coin, kind of just like, I don't know, you kind of have to think of it in a really abstract way, but it's like love and war are both just like really powerful like forces, you know. It's like they can have big impacts or whatever. And I feel like what's the Greek god of love? Aphrodite, I
Aphrodite.
guess.
No, wait, she's beauty? Is it still the same?
She
I
might
don't
be
know.
different. I think I'm thinking more of like Athena actually, but
But
Athena is
she's
more of like
also
wisdom.
war and wisdom, right?
I
And it
do
throws me
think,
off because
yeah,
she's like war, but also Ares is war. Like,
I think Athena is almost another like Greek invention where they kind of took Ishtar, but they made her a little more wise, and then they spun off Aphrodite as just the love part, and I feel like I don't really see Aphrodite with war very much. I feel like they kind of split that off later.
yeah, but like I said, I thought it was Athena being, yeah, I don't
But also look at this picture on the right is insane. If you Google any of these gods' names, there's so much crazy fan art, which makes sense. But yeah, you can see her. She's identified with having wings, and she has a lion sort of on a leash, so she's kind of maybe controlling nature in a certain way. Um, and she has a spear here. She kind of looks like an angel in a certain way, because not all these gods have wings necessarily, but she's identified with the lion, much like her brother. So I guess her and her brother are both with the lion. And there's Uruk, which we've already seen. All right, we're getting close to the end here. We have like two more, I think. These are the more kind of obscure, kind of like interesting ones. This guy is Dumuzi,
know.
and he's the shepherd god. Um, so he's kind of just the god of shepherds, but it's also about resurrection, which I'll explain in a second. But his city is Bad Tabira, not good Tabira. And I just like this picture. I think this is another one from that board game I was talking about where it just has cool art. I love that he's this giant shepherd. He's like, all right, I gotta get this sheep corralled in here. Oh, shout out to I do have the quote, or I do have the YouTube here. The Legends of History is where I got this picture.
I
Uh,
like it. I'm not gonna lie too. It literally looks like some Magic the Gathering card art or
it looks a
something.
lot like Magic the Gathering. Yeah. The Muzid, also known as Tammuz, the god who died and rose again. So he was Inanna, the god we just talked about, husband and consort, and his myth is essentially kind of the flip of hers. So when Inanna goes to the underworld, and she apparently needs a substitute to take her place, that's how she's able to be revived. And so she chooses her husband Dumuzi, who apparently is just relaxing on his throne instead of mourning her apparent death. So he kind of deserves it. He's kind of like a the guy who gets tied up, and I think it's actually Prometheus who ends up getting tied up and having his liver eaten by crows, and then where he did something kind of bad, and then he gets
Well, I mean,
punished.
Prometheus is one who brought fire to humans. I know that was
Right,
like,
so he did a
yeah.
good thing, but the gods were mad. The gods were mad. So he's more like the Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill, I guess. But
Okay.
anyway, he apparently women's laments for Tammuz are even referenced later in the Hebrew Bible, Ezekiel 8:14, as a foreign practice observers found notable. So they would sort of like cry over this god who like died. And again, there are later like Greek myths that are very similar, like Orpheus goes into the underworld to save his wife, but then he's just leads her out, but all he has to do is not look back at her. And at the last second, he looks back and she turns into salt. So
Oh my, dude, that's another biblical story. Oh
that's
my
in the
God.
Bible too. Yeah.
That's crazy how many there are.
It's all connected, man.
It just not even
Uh,
just looking back, it literally turns into a pillar of salt. Like, really? Like,
yeah, it is crazy.
crazy they
Um,
copied the Bible 2,000 years before it.
right.
I can't believe they did that.
So it's also funny that Bad Tabira, I haven't really heard of it, but I guess it gets overshadowed by Uruk and even like Uma, I've heard of.
Yeah,
But it's sort of a
Thurman.
more obscure city. It kind of makes me want to look into like what's going on in Pazurish Darjan or like Larak. I just want to know like what was going or
I'm trying to go
Dil.
back to that out of context too. It's like, dude, I just really want to know what's going on at Darzan.
That would actually maybe that could be a fun special episode sometime is like I just look into obscure Babylonian cities. There's like, oh yeah, this week we're going to talk about Borsippa, Rapakern, and Nerabutum. All right, so I think this is the last god or goddess, and her name is Ereshkigal.
I love that art.
She is pretty cool, and she is the domain of the underworld. So their Hades was a chick, which is pretty cool. Um, and women can be the god of the underworld too. They can do anything. And her city was Kutha or Cutha, and she actually weirdly shared it with Nurgle, who I think was almost like the male version of, maybe he was more like a Hades. But she has no major temple of her own. The underworld itself is treated as her domain. So it's sort of like when you die, you visit the temple of Ereshkigal. And they call it the land of no return. And unlike most Mesopotamian underworld imagery, her realm isn't really like hell. It's not a place of punishment, but it's just kind of like grim and dusty.
Well, yeah,
uh,
because I thought it was interesting that they don't really have like a hell or a heaven kind of thing.
Yeah, actually, I should look more into that. I guess here it kind of just seems like you end up more in just maybe like it's just kind of gray, like it's not really exciting, but everyone just goes to the same place. There's not like the levels of hell or anything like that. But yeah, I that is interesting. I don't know if what their concept of like heaven or anything, but
I actually looked that up because I thought it was interesting.
yeah, let me know what do they think?
So they don't think that how you spend your life matters at all, which is super interesting.
Hmm.
So, which I guess works out for some people, but that you all go to the underworld. And funny enough, another like similarity to another religion, there's a guy who takes you on a boat down a river, and he takes you through these like seven different gates where you shed all of your like mortal stuff, and then it kind of is just like I don't understand why they like. Okay, I'm going on a tangent, but so religion is about like I don't know, you care about the afterlife and stuff like that, but they make it seem like the afterlife sucks so much, even if you're like a king. Like, I don't get they're like, you basically eat dust all the time. Like, that's like what you do. And there's like no water. So, like, you need people, where you drink dirty water. And the only way to get clean water is in your gravesite, they put little tubes or something. And then your people are supposed to go and pour water in so you won't be thirsty. Uh,
I guess
but
it's similar to the Egyptians because the Egyptians obviously saw that you had to like have all this stuff, like you if you
well,
wanted
no,
to.
but they're saying the stuff doesn't come with you either.
Oh, that right, right. But
They actually said now
just
this
the
came
water.
later, so this is more like Babylonian or like Isin Larsa period stuff. But they talk about that they thought, oh no, actually your burial type matters, which gets more like the Egyptians. But before that, they didn't think that. So they started to kind of switch and be like, oh, your burial type matters. But yeah, there's a ferryman, there's seven gates where you lose everything, and basically all of your food and water is all just dirt unless people who know you offer stuff to you continually, not just like right when you die.
So it sounds essentially like the Christian version of hell, but everyone goes there, but it's not as bad. It's just more
Yeah.
like it's more like a purgatory of just kind of like boring and like you can have some impact, like you can kind of help out your ancestors by giving them food and things like that. I mean, I can see how it works out because obviously it's like, okay, well, I don't want to die. That doesn't sound very good, but I can at least help out and I can like give things to my
Yeah, it just is funny
ancestors.
that the best you can get is like food and water from people who care about you, and then that's it.
And
Like
that's it. Sorry.
that's it. That's the best you got.
But then it
I
kind
was
of makes sense
really
then when
surprised.
if you know if a Christian comes by and is like, well, actually, you can go to heaven and it's pretty legit, then maybe you'd be convinced. But Anana's older, so she's actually Anana's older sister, and there's apparently tension between them, or like some kind of rivalry. And there's some I guess that's part of that myth where I said Anana goes into the underworld. She must do it because Aresh Kagal is like upset at her and doesn't want to help her out. And yeah, she gets paired with Nurgle, her husband slash co-ruler, once Akkadian tradition merges with their cults at Kutha. So I guess once the Akkadians come in, because that I think I said at the beginning, but this is just Sumerians we're talking about today.
Yeah, we're not
And
talking
the
about
Akkadians come in later. They'll kind of merge her. They kind of get married. They're like, oh, you got the female goddess, we got the male underworld guy, so they can get married. Um, and I think this guy on the right is Nurgle. He looks pretty creepy, honestly.
I mean, you should see the 40K version. So,
I
and it's
did
funny,
actually see
40K
it.
kept it where he's the plague god. So,
Oh, nice. Because I saw the one where he's the giant green, like kind of goblin looking thing,
yeah, yeah. I don't know if goblin's the right word, but yeah, the
but like
giant
a
green thing
weird green
looked
monster.
disgusting. Yeah.
So yeah, Kutha is way up there, and as we said, it's kind of connected with the Akkadians. And yeah, here's just another image showing Dumuzi dying, and then Aresh Kagal is like they're sort of two sides of the same coin. He's the life version, but then he has to spend time in hell. I think it's sort of like Persephone for the Greeks. She was like that, where when she was in hell, she ate a couple pomegranate seeds, so then she has to stay there during the winter. And her mom is like Gaia or something, or the god of hunting. So or the god of like agriculture. Anyway, it's very similar to that, I think. And yeah, it makes sense. All these agricultural societies are inventing these gods that are about life and animals and growing food and then the food dying in the
Yeah.
winter. Um, and yeah, here's just all of them together.
I
All the
like it.
gods.
The pictures get progressively like, and I get that these are just artist rendition, but I love how the beginning ones are like because they're so literal from the carvings, and then later on it's like, oh wow.
Yeah, it's honestly because I found these four. They're more the major ones, and
Well, and
they,
those ones are from the carvings, so they're more realistic to what they drew at the time.
which is it's kind of a cool art style. I really like Enki. Enki, like I would wear a shirt with that Enki design on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously these other ones are very much fan art and stuff like that. But I hope you guys enjoyed a little change. I think this is actually the board game where I got some of this art from. But I don't
That's
know the name of
cool.
it, but it looks pretty fun. And it kind of they all have different like powers and things like that. There's like wonders, like the Ishtar Gate. This temple for Marduk is crazy. Etimenanki.
I love
Anyway,
it.
I hope you enjoyed this special episode of the Lost Decades podcast about Sumerian gods. Next week, we will be back with a normal episode. I think we're doing 1550 to 1500.
I
And
so
spoilers, not really spoilers, but one thing I've learned since the last episode, and I'd already sort of knew this, but just for sure that we were apparently really in like they call it a dark age. It was like a mini dark age of the Bronze Age. That's kind of between the middle Bronze Age and the late Bronze Age. We were in this weird like dark age where the Hyksos are controlling Egypt and the Hittites attacked Babylon and all that kind of stuff. So
well, it
we're
tracks
actually
because
exiting
even
a
like we
dark
were
age.
saying, the Hittites are completely falling apart. The Asur are in
Yeah,
a dark age. Babylon is completely destroyed. Like, well, not completely destroyed. That was a bad phrasing, but like Babylon is sacked,
it's not
and
doing well for
Egypt was
sure.
in the intermittent period. It's so funny.
Yeah, so we'll get out of that. And this ended up still being a 48-minute episode. So
Wow.
if you like this format, let me know, leave a comment, and maybe we'll do more of these. Um, and that being said, if you're ever trying to travel around Mesopotamia, make sure you don't get lost.